Hello and welcome back to my channel. This is James and I'm continuing on with this Barnstormer build log. So this video is going to be all about the engine. And what I need to do is I need to break this engine in because it's actually a new engine even though it's an old engine. So this is a OS Max, like I've mentioned before, an OS Max FP series 0.25 cubic inch displacement engine, and it's actually the perfect size, and it's actually what this model was built for. I think it was a 0.20 to a 0.25, and you can see here it fits really nicely in the engine rails, and I will mount it obviously, but that's going to be probably in another video, because first I actually have to break the engine in. Now I got this engine on eBay, and the reason I purchased this engine was because this kind of keeping in sort of with the theme of this being a vintage kit and a vintage build. I wanted to use the same engine that I had on the plane when I built it back in the 1980s, and that's what this is. This is the OS FP. So this engine is available on eBay. You can find the FP series used, and you can even find them new. And the prices of it vary depending on the condition of the engine. Probably a used engine like this you could probably get at 25, 30, 40 bucks. A new one, brand new, that comes with all the original packaging, may kind of get you closer to $100 or so. So there's a lot of options. Now I'm using this OS Max glow engine, and obviously you can use a variety of things. You could use different size engines, different makes. You can even do electric on this. I don't really know anything about electric motors and engine motors, so but I know you could this is probably a good candidate, this kit, to actually put an electric motor on. But if I was going to do that, I would go ahead and put these rails in just like the kit calls for, and then I would just cut them off and then mount kind of like your outrigger or whatever it is that holds the electric motor on, and then you'd have room in here for your battery and stuff. So the kits, you could do electric or a fuel, as I would call it. Now so this is glow fuel, which means it uses like a nitromethane mix, and it's glow fuels are getting to be kind of on the expensive side. They're around $30+ a gallon, and I think the hobby is really moving more toward gasoline engines, and I'll probably be doing that in the future myself. But anyhow, I'm going to stick with this engine for this build. Okay, so a little bit history of this engine itself. So back like in the early 80s or so, RC hobby was a lot bigger than it is now, and OS Max or OS engines they had really high demand for these engines, and the demand was so great that OS was actually considering doing away with all their 2-cycle engines and just doing and building their 4-cycle engines. Well, there was sort of like a backlash or kind of a pushback from the industry. A lot of distributors out there wanted OS to still supply sort of like an entry-level type kind of simple engine, because at that time I guess there wasn't, they worried that they would be stuck with sort of like these knockoff or cheaper brands, and they really wanted to have like quality engines. So OS decided that they would go ahead and kind of answer that sort of request, and they produced this FP series. So the FP series when it originally came out, it was like at the 0.10, 15, I think all the way up to like 0.35, maybe up to 0.40, but that was sort of like the starting point. And the FP was designed to be a little more economical and also a little more user friendly. All right, so I need to break this in, and before I mount it, and I'm going to do that. I'm not going to kind of like what I just said. I'm not going to mount it and break it in on the airplane. I'm going to break it in on a test stand. And luckily, because I do have when I bought this package, it came with the instructions and everything. So I do have the original instructions, and you can actually even get these online in a PDF format. I mean, there's so much stuff available online. It's amazing. But I'm lucky I have like the original packaging. So I'm going to follow these instructions and break it in. I'm going to do a video of the break-in. It's going to be included. I am going to use I'm going to use this Master Airscrew. The size is the 5.9, and that's sort of the 9.5, which is a 9-inch diameter or 9-inch length, with a number 5 pitch, and that's sort of recommended in the instructions for the break-in. Okay, so my next step now is just I'm going to go ahead and mount this on my test stand, and then we'll take it outside and get this thing running and break it in. Okay, well, before I move on to breaking in the engine, I actually want to show you a broken engine. So this is this is an OS FP25 that was on the original plane I built. Now, I've talked about it before throughout my videos. I do refer back to sort of like my original build on this. And what happened is in about 2016, 17, somewhere around there, I restored that old plane, and I had the original FP engine on it. And I flew that thing for a really long time, and the engine ran great. It was amazing because this thing sat in the garage for like 30 years. I sort of took it apart, I got it cleaned up, I got it running, and the thing ran like a top. But what happened was I was flying, and the wing, the covering came off the wing during flight, and it sort of like the wing kind of fluttered and it broke, and the airplane went just straight into the runway at a pretty high clip, pretty much top speed, and you can kind of see where it hit. Here's the spinner, and the engine just basically all the weight and the force went right onto the engine. It hit the nose cone or it hit the spinner, and it just all that energy just transferred to the entire airplane, and the engine just exploded, just shattered when it hit the asphalt. So I collected the pieces, and because kind of it's sort of a nostalgic thing, and it kind of made me sad that happened. But I collected the pieces, and I made this little plaque, just sort of a remembrance of that old airplane and of that old engine, and that's what this is. So this is the original FP that I probably bought like in 1980 sometime, and mounted it on the original plane. So yeah, pretty cool. There's the piston. Of course, you can see like it's just got destroyed. Probably the only thing that didn't really get damaged was the muffler, and looks like I saved the glow plug, maybe the carburetor too. But anyhow, so that's a little bit of history, right? Okay, so I recently built out a new test stand for myself for my engines, and I have sort of a combination of test stands on here. So this one is sort of an older block wooden test stand, and I actually got that. Here it is, right here. I actually got this in a hobby store, in sort of like their used bin. They had a bin, and this thing was laying in there, and I got it for about 20 bucks. Kind of on the expensive side, but this is kind of too big for the 0.25 engine. And then I also purchased more recently was this Mayatech engine stand, and I think this is made in China, and you can look online, and they go for anywhere from 25 to 30 bucks, and depends on the shipping. And so I mounted this one on here, and this one will actually mount, will fit the 0.25. I think it goes up to bigger sizes, but I'm going to mount this right on here like this. Of course, I have a fuel tank that I kind of put in this block, and I got it sort of padded so that the vibration doesn't shake it too much. Because what you want to do on a test stand is you want to make sure that your fuel is not vibrating so much, because that's what will happen. It sits on the wood, and you'll get like it'll be like frothy or bubbly inside here, and that's going to mess up your fine tuning, because that's I think it's going to give you sort of a lean mixture if you have a bunch of air bubbles and stuff in there. So you want to try to protect the gas tank or from getting too much vibration. So I just put a cloth under here. We'll see how that works. And then I just made like a makeshift little throttle thing that I can go back and forth to either side, and I'll just hook this on straight like this, and I'll just use my hand to adjust the throttle. And then this is just a servo wheel in here, and I just drilled a hole through it, and I mounted it with this big bolt, and I can just kind of tighten it down by hand, and used hand pressure to get it tight and kind of adjust it that way. So let me go ahead and mount my my engine on here, and then we can move on to starting it up. All right, so this is loose. I can put this in here like this. I'm going to have to make some adjustments on here, but let's just get it far enough out. Pull the muffler off here. It's got a little gasket in there. Let's put this down here. Okay. Now let's push this forward a little bit. Okay, so I got the engine mounted on here. Let me tighten these guys up back here. And I got the my throttle linkage set up here. Again, this is going to turn and move the throttle that way. Pull it back here. And now for the prop. So I'm going to be using this Master Airscrew prop here. Let me pop this open. And I'm going to have to balance this prop. I always like to do a prop balance, but I'm just going to pull it out right now and take a look at it. Oops. Just a simple little wood prop. I'll probably do a separate video someday of kind of balancing propellers. And then instead of using a spinner, I'm going to be using one of these. I think this is Harry Higley prop nut. I think that's what this is. Yeah, but I'm just going to be using a prop nut on this. Again, just because I like the way it's going to look on this plane. I think with the sort of like that vintage character, having the prop nut on there like that's going to look a little bit better. All right, so this is pretty much set up. I will check the balance on the prop really quick and then take it outside, and we'll set it up outside and get this thing started. Okay, well, I'm ready to go ahead and start this engine up and give it a test run. So I'm going to be using just the Powermaster 18% nitromethane on this. I don't know what kind of glow plug I have in here, but this is the OS Max 25FP. Now the braking instructions are pretty straightforward. Essentially, you just basically have to run it at full throttle and like about a half a turn half a turn rich off of the ideal setting. So once I get it going, I'm going to get the RPMs to the ideal setting, the highest pitch, and then I'm going to back it off about a half a turn and run it rich. And I have to run it rich at full throttle for a full tank of gas. And then at that point, it's considered essentially broken in, and I can take it out and start flying with it. But they do recommend that I keep it rich for about 4 or 5 flights, and then each time I can kind of lean it up a little bit. So basically, after about 5 or 6 flights, or about after the run-in, and I guess what I should say maybe 5 or 6 tanks, I can probably just set it for the ideal setting and run it the way it's supposed to be run without running it overly rich. But anyhow, so we're going to start it up and see how it goes. Okay, so here's my carburetor setting, and it's closed right now, so I'm going to open this up 2 complete turns. So there's 1, 2. And that'll get us set there. I'm not going to mess around with the air bleed or anything else right now, and we'll see if we can get this going. Okay, so the maximum RPM on this is about 16,000 RPM. I'm going to see what it is. Probably not going to run it that high, but that's just that's what's in the table. But it'll probably be running lower than that, and I'm not going to kill it with the high RPM, but that's just the maximum setting according to the specifications. On the idle side, it's about 2,500 RPM. Okay, what we saw was we had a pretty rich mixture. We had a lot of smoke coming out of the exhaust. We even had some unused fuel, spitting out of the back of the exhaust. Everything got really oily, and that was good because that was the setting that we're supposed to use for the first break-in run. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go ahead and refill the tank back up, and I'm going to run another tank full through the engine, and I'm just going to decrease the richness a little bit. So instead of like a half a turn out, I'm going to do about a quarter turn or so out, and we'll let that one run through. And at that point, I think that's good, and I can mount it on the plane and do the rest of the break-in while during actual flights. Okay, well, just for a little recap here. So what I did is I ran 2 full tanks through the engine on a very rich setting. The first one I ran about a half a turn richer than the ideal or the top RPM, and then the second one I did that at about a quarter turn above the top RPM. So I was getting around 9,600 RPMs when I had it kind of ideally tuned, and then it dropped off to around 7,000 RPMs when it was really rich. So anyhow, it looks like it's running pretty well, and you can tell, obviously when you saw that smoke and the exhaust billowing out of the back of it, and the muffler spitting all of the unspent fuel, that was a very, very, very rich setting. So at this point, the engine is essentially ready to be mounted on the airplane. And then when I do fly it, I will keep it a little bit on the rich side. And for a 2-stroke engine or 4-stroke engine, any of these type of glow engines, you do run them rich anyhow, because you don't want to. If you run them lean, or you run them at the ideal setting, or I shouldn't say the ideal. If you run them at the top RPM, they're probably too close to being lean, and that can burn up your engine. So you basically want to back it off about a quarter or a third to make your mixture a little bit on the rich side when you're flying. You want to see a nice kind of faint sort of trail of exhaust coming out of the back of the plane when it's flying. That tells you that you have a pretty good setting. So one thing I want to note is, earlier I called this a prop nut. It's actually not a nut, it's a hub. So this is I think this is like a Harry Higley or similar prop hub for this OS engine. So this is aluminum. They make them in brass. And anyhow, so this is actually just, like I said, a prop hub. And that's it. So I'm going to go ahead and take this off. I'm going to clean it up. It's all oily. And then we can mount it onto the plane and carry on with the build. Almost finished. We're getting to the end. Okay, well, that's it for the engine break-in. And thanks for watching my channel. And we'll see you next time.